Welcome to The Alternative Investor. Well, agri-funds are portfolios that typically invest in agricultural infrastructure, land, biological assets, and various other farming activities. So today we thought, why not talk about the investment case for looking into agri-funds? And we're going to be doing that with Smital Rambhai, who is a portfolio manager for agri-funds at Future Growth Asset Management. Smital, thank you so much for your time. Let's look at, in the context of South Africa, the agricultural landscape pre-COVID versus now.
So Future Growth sees investment in the agriculture sector as a key contributor towards GDP growth, food security and job creation in South Africa. Despite the effects of the COVID-19 pandemic, there were already no major structural changes in demand for food locally and globally. And we expect that not to change over the next decade. In fact, as we know, population growth continues to drive increased absolute demand, although individual countries would experience different trajectories in the demand for specific types of commodities. And just to give you an insight, the SA agri sector last year, did quite well in terms of its contribution towards GDP growth. It grew by 13.1% year on year. I mean, if you compare that relative to the rest of the economy, which contracted by 7%, it was quite a healthy outperformance. And it's on the back of higher commodity prices, strong export demand, and again the exchange rate was quite favorable last year.
So let's look at the key features of the agri sector that potential investors would need to be aware of.
So, I've been in this agri space for over eight to 9 years now. And, when we look at, certain risk factors, the key features we look at is, you have to be aware that there's volatility in investing in the agri sector, there's complexity, and there's traceability. When I talk about volatility, I'm talking about, variable weather conditions and climate change, which can cause a fluctuation in your production yields on these farms. And that can impact local and global supply dynamics, which obviously affects your profitability. And then you've got geopolitical kind of influences and government action. So, you have sometimes governments that take action to subsidize production in certain countries and certain countries ban importation of certain goods to protect their own domestic supplies. So, and then you look at, in a country like South Africa, we've got sometimes, policy uncertainty around land expropriation, which also has an impact on the ability of investors to access capital investment for the sector. And then just generally, you see changing consumer preferences due to lifestyle changes. You're seeing this whole vegan revolution where, you've got plant-based burgers popping up, at your traditional meat kind of restaurants. So there is, there's a lot of volatility in the sector and then complexity. So I think people, when you go to a supermarket, for example, Pick and Pay or Woolworths, you see you see grapes on the shelf, but there's different types of cultivars. I'm sure when you see it on the shelf, there's different coloration of fruit, and when you look at the complexities that when a farmer plants a certain variety, for example, of table grapes, certain varieties are more popular than others, and they can be more profitable. So it's quite a complex business if you don't understand, even the variety of fruits or vegetables that you're planting. And I think what's become more important lately is traceability. Consumers are wanting, more traceability. They want to know where their produce is sourced from.
So let's talk about one of Future Growth's agri-funds. I mean, what's the investment objective and how have those funds performed over the past few years?
Just Future Growth as a house invests in the agri sector. So we provide debt funding to agri-businesses across the value chain. We take equity stakes in agri-businesses where we feel the management team has potential and a strong track record. And then we develop the Future Growth Agri-Funds, which is a real estate fund where we acquire land and infrastructure and release it out to a commercial farming company. These farms have secured water rights. We focus on permanent crops because they're more high value for our investors. And we've got exposure to table grapes, citrus, deciduous fruit, and stone fruits. And yeah, the fund's performance has held up relatively well, given, the rest of the market. And, again, the Rand hedge in terms of the exchange rates being weak, gives us favorable kind of outcomes on our farms, because a lot of our fruit is exported to certain countries.
Before I let you go, your outlook for the sector?
So I think, the outlook is, there's a lot of opportunities, there's a lot of challenges as well. I think everybody knows that Land Bank in April last year defaulted on its debt, which created a liquidity challenge for a lot of agricultural businesses. And I think the SA agriculture market is in need of an alternative source of funding outside of the traditional banks and co-ops. Just my anticipation of the growth in the sector is that we are expecting high yields in 2021 this year, as well as next year, across the various sectors. And we feel that it will lift the South African GDP numbers. And yeah, I think land reform is also critical to the success of the growth of the South African agriculture sector. I think mentoring and support will be crucial to set the beneficiaries up for success. I think further, the emerging farmers need access to capital to develop the land. And I think a blended finance model should be developed between the government and the private sector, and so that we can create a strong agri sector for South Africa and continue growing this attractive space.
Smital, thank you so much for your time. That is Smital Rambhai, who is a portfolio manager for agri-funds at Future Growth Asset Management.